On December 11, 2001, a man named Elmer McCurdy was transported across the country in a coffin. At the time, most people believed they were burying the body of a long-dead outlaw. But the truth, they were burying a man who had already been dead for over 60 years and no one had noticed. Here's how that happened. Elmer McCurdy was a failed train robber from the early 1900s. In 1911, after botching a robbery and being tracked down by law enforcement, he was shot and killed in a standoff in Oklahoma. But since no one came to claim his body, the local funeral home embalmed it and propped it up in the corner, charging people a nickel to see the bandit who wouldn't give up. Weirdly, it worked. People paid. And for years, Elmer's body was passed around from carnival to museum to wax attraction. Somewhere along the way, people forgot it was a real corpse. They thought it was just a prop. Fast forward to 1976. Over 60 years later, a film crew was shooting an episode of The $6 Million Man at an old amusement park in Long Beach, California, while preparing a scene inside a funhouse. A crew member tried to move what he thought was a wax dummy, and the arm snapped off. Inside was bone, muscle, a real human being. When news broke that a man had been found in a coffin at an old abandoned funhouse, people were shocked. How could someone be buried alive? Was this an elaborate murder plot or a tragic accident? And what was the strange story behind the dead man in the coffin? To find out, let's travel back in time to 1904. We'll start our story with a man named Elmer McCurdy. If you've done your reading, you may have heard of him before. That's because he infamously became known as the Bandit, who wouldn't give up, and his exploits have become part of American folklore. In October of 1905, while living in Los Angeles, McCurdy robbed a Santa Fe train. He and his partner made off with $30,000 in today's money. They would only get away with $800 because McCurdy, while trying to flee, tripped and dropped the bag. He and his partner were soon arrested, but McCurdy escaped custody and disappeared. For the next few years, he lived on the streets. He supported himself by doing odd jobs, stealing when he needed to. In September of 1907, he was caught for robbing a miner of $100 and spent 6 months in jail. After his release, he fell back into his old habits, and on February 27, 1909, he robbed a train full of gold and silver coins. It was only 2 days later when Sheriff Heck Thomas tracked him down, cornering him in a house near Wister, Oklahoma. When McCurdy learned there was nowhere left to run, he grabbed his gun and began firing. Thomas returned fire and struck McCurdy twice. He died soon after. His body was taken to the nearest funeral home, where it was prepared for burial. Since no one came to claim it, the funeral director decided to capitalize on the tragedy. At first, he charged people 25 cents to view the body, but soon lowered the price to a nickel. It sounds bizarre, but during the early 1900s, this was a common practice. This is the same man who was later exhibited at the Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California. Over the years, it's unclear exactly how he got there, but we know he was exhibited at the park for decades. According to legend, one day the owner of the funhouse received a mysterious phone call. On the other end of the line was a representative from the Guinness Book of World Records. They wanted to know if the man in the funhouse was real. When the owner replied yes, the representative told him they would be adding the mummified bandit to the book. This lent an air of legitimacy to the corpse. For decades, people came to the funhouse to see the mummified bandit. Some even claimed the experience gave them goosebumps. In 1976, however, the funhouse was demolished to make way for the Long Beach Aquarium. During its demolition, the corpse was discovered. It was placed in a coffin and shipped to Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. There, it was identified through fingerprints as Elmer McCurdy. After 65 years, Elmer McCurdy finally got a proper burial. In 1977, his remains were interred at Inglewood Park Cemetery. To prevent anyone from ever digging him up again, the grave was filled with concrete, just to be safe. Let's hope whoever's buried in the grave next door didn't mind sharing with a 60-year-old corpse.